Aloha, and thank you for joining us today on this program of A Better Day. I'm State Senator Sam Slom, and for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be discussing issues that are currently important to you, Hawaii, and our nation. And as a reminder, your suggestions, your comments, your criticisms are always welcome, and you can contact me at samslom.com or here at the State Capitol. We'll have phone numbers at the end of the program. But we always say, why are we calling this a better day? Well, in part because, people talk about a good day, about this kind of day, that kind of day. For you, for me, and for our children, we want a better day. And those of us here believe in Hawaii. We believe in our opportunities and the people in the state. And we're really happy today because we have a very special guest who also is one of those positive guys. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always has something positive to say about our state, our country. And I'm talking, of course, about Charles Djou. Charles, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on my show.
Charles has been, he's the quintessential athlete because he's covered all the bases. He was in our state legislature briefly in the State House, and then he was in the City Council. I still don't know how you put up with that. I told you that, right? I don't know how you could do that. And then he won a special election, was in the U.S. Congress, and now he's running for that congressional seat again. He's also involved in his community, and more importantly to many of us, he served with distinction with the U.S. military and in Afghanistan. And so I guess opening up, everybody's been asking you about your experiences. A lot of people said they changed you when you went to Afghanistan. First, I got to ask you, when you got the number, you were called up. Did you think you were going to be sitting in a nice air-conditioned JAG office somewhere, watching old reruns of Law and Order and doing judicial things?
Yeah, Sam. First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show.
Our pleasure.
And then in terms of Afghanistan, yes, I did not expect. I got called up and I got deployed with the 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Infantry Division. I first of all did not expect to necessarily get called up. Second, when I did get called up, I expected to go to some division headquarters and sit in an air-conditioned office. I did not expect to get dropped into the middle of nowhere Kandahar province, and I certainly didn't expect to go to the mountain infantry. But it's all an experience.
You volunteered,
and
right?
Yes, and I'm happy to be home. As Sam, I share with folks. My father-in-law served in Vietnam, and he oftentimes tells the family that someday if Vietnam ever really turns away from communism, opens up to the United States, even though he was in Vietnam in 1968, he'd love to go back and visit Vietnam, maybe show his grandkids Vietnam.
Sure.
I will assure you, when I'm like 70 years old, I am not going to be wanting to show my kids Afghanistan. That is not just...
You don't think Kandahar and Afghanistan is going to become one of our destination areas?
I hear a lot of veterans talking about Vietnam, or even when they were in Italy or in France in World War II, and talking about some natural beauty of France or Italy or Vietnam. Perhaps there's some natural beauty to those kind of parts of the world. Afghanistan is one where it's it's a tough place to love. And I just, on so many different levels, I'm so happy to be home back here in Hawaii.
You also tell the story about being in a tent with 7 other guys and all that, how you appreciate your home, your highly leveraged, highly mortgaged home or whatever.
Looking back, and I think this is something average Americans don't oftentimes understand, but living in a tent with 7 other men, with no running water, with no indoor plumbing, where each and every day you eat food that comes either out of a can or frozen, makes you really learn to appreciate America. It makes you appreciate a lot of the things we take for granted here as Americans.
People have been saying this for years, that Americans do take their freedoms for granted. They take all the material things they have and all that. I mean, we complain because our computer is not fast enough, or when we have a 2-minute power outage or something like that. And we really, we don't understand how the rest of the people live around the world and things that happen.
And actually, Sam, if I can quickly just share a compelling story that I found, and make all of us as Americans really appreciate what we have as Americans, is, one of the most profound things I saw when I was in Afghanistan was to see these illiterate peasants taking their children to school. And because schools in Afghanistan are oftentimes military targets, the Taliban view them as places where Western values are corrupting the young. It's very dangerous to go to school. these illiterate Afghan peasants would take their children, and in order to take their children to school, they would have to get an automatic rifle to help protect their children. And they would do this because they knew and they understood that the future for their children rested in their children learning to read and to write. And it's their sons and their daughters, not just their sons. And for us as Americans, when we sometimes complain that, well, the worst thing we have to do to get our kids in is well, we got to deal with traffic to take our kids to school, it's a profound statement to me about how privileged we are as Americans. And equally, I think, profound for me was that in Afghanistan, for so many Afghans, for them the concept of being able to select their own government, for them to have the ability and the privilege of having a say in what their community should be like in the future, for them is an amazing honor and privilege, something that they've never experienced before, that I think too many Americans just so easily disregard.
Why do you think that's happened? Why do you think that's true? I mean, we've all seen the images of people that risked death to show their thumb with a purple imprint on it that they had voted. And we, and particularly here in Hawaii, where at one time after statehood, we led the nation in percentage of voting, and now we're among the worst in the...
Yes.
Why was there any incident or incidents you think that brought that about?
You know, here in Hawaii, Sam, I think the problem at its core for us in Hawaii is we have a machine state. We have one-party rule. And for too many people in Hawaii, I think they legitimately look at our government and feel nothing can ever change. Nothing I do or say can ever make a difference, because power in Hawaii is held by a select few, a old boy network. And what's the sense? And
that's been a theme of the political campaigns this year, which is different and unusual from the past.
Yes.
Particularly when you look at some of the people that are making those claims. Taking on big unions, big business, big government.
And you know, Sam, for me, when I hear that from a lot of voters, and I don't think it's an illegitimate concern that with one-party rule we have here in Hawaii, how can anybody ever make a difference? It's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe the machine is all-powerful and will always control everything here, it always will. But really, the power still rests in the people. We can make change.
This is what I tell business people, too, because of all the different groups and all. Small businesses really feel disenfranchised now. I said, look, you've got the numbers. 95% of all the businesses in the state are small business. You create 2 out of every 3 new jobs. You are the engine of creativity and innovation. But if you don't use it, and you don't understand what the issues are, then in fact we've wasted that. So.
And actually, if I could add to that point, Sam, you know, small business is the engine of economic growth. I really believe my children, in all likelihood, when they graduate from high school and college, they're not going to work for a big business. They're going to work for a small business. Now, 50 years ago, when Hawaii's government was set up and designed to protect big business, big unions, and big government, that might have been okay, because 50 years ago, the overwhelming majority of people
wasn't okay.
Well, I mean, they were in big government, big unions, and big business. But today, that circle is getting smaller and smaller of people who are in big government, big unions, or big business.
But they still have the power.
But they have the power. But the jobs and the future rests outside that circle. It's in small business. And that's one of the things that we have absolutely got to change here in Hawaii. Got to move away from this mentality of big, big, big.
Well, you know, you've always been a champion of small business. You understand small business and the entrepreneurial spirit. You know, people, they still argue about what the definition of a small business is, and it's easy in Hawaii. Start with a big business, and pretty soon, with all the regulations, taxes, and fees and all, you'll have a small business. So it works out easily that way, right? Let's talk about a couple of national issues, because you're enmeshed in that. You know, it's interesting during the presidential campaign. We're finding out that the Republican candidate is a felon and a murderer and doesn't pay taxes, but we don't find out about the destruction and the harm that, for example, the national debt is causing, has caused, and will continue to cause. You've been an outspoken critic about that for years. I mean, back in... When were you first talking about the debt? At what level was the national debt?
Actually, Sam, great that you brought that up here. Our national debt today is $16 trillion, and it's growing by $1.5 trillion a year, each and every year. You know, when I was first elected to public office in the year 2000, it was less than half that, and everybody thought, oh my gosh, that was an astronomical number at that time. But let me put this in very personal terms to individuals, because I think When I say $16 trillion and we have a $1.5 trillion,
nobody
really
can fathom
fathom
that, right.
In personal terms, what that means for each and every single individual American is $50,000 in debt for every single American. That's your share of the national debt. And that's not you and me, Sam. I mean, that's my kids, my 5-year-old daughter who's entering kindergarten, who cannot drive, who has yet to get her first job, who hasn't gotten out of high school. She owes $50,000 because of our spending today that we're mortgaging our children's future.
You know what I've always said in the past? The reason that newborn babies cry, they come out from a safe and protected environment. They look around. The first thing they see is, you know, how much debt and mortgage we've hung on them, and they say, "Ah, holy cow!" You know, and it gets worse.
Right. And you know, Sam, I also want to make this point here. And a lot of people say, "Well, you know, you only care about the numbers. You're just a wonk here." And that's actually not the case for myself. You know, I'm the only major candidate running for major office in Hawaii this year who has children. I care very much about my children, my children's future. I care about their education. I care about making sure they have a wonderful environment to grow up in. I want them to have the same things that I've had growing up. But if we don't take care of this national debt, if we cannot control this out-of-control spending that's going on right now in Washington, D.C., we will never be able to take care of my children's education. We will completely waste away. My parents who are currently on Social Security, their program will not be there for my children. This crisis we're facing right now with this looming national debt over our country is going to take care of everything that we have in our country.
You know, you mentioned that you're the only candidate with children. You're one of the very, very few candidates that actually voted himself into going to being deployed in Afghanistan. And what I always say about people that are small business owners or have small business experience, it's not that we're any better than anyone else. It's just that our experiences are different. We will react differently. We make mistakes. Boy, we make plenty of mistakes. But it's our money. It's our family name, and we're not going to make that same mistake twice. And I think that's a primary difference. And everybody talks about, as you know, down in the big square building here, everything is for the keiki. You know, everything we do, we violate ethics, it's for the keiki. We raise our salaries, it's for the keiki. You know, more perks for us for the keiki. And yet, even when we're talking about these numbers, behind all of these numbers, there are people and there are individuals, and they're struggling. I keep maintaining in Hawaii, we get all these speeches about we've turned the corner, we're doing better now, and it's true that maybe if you pick certain industries or businesses, visitor industry, for example, having a terrific year, good for them. Car sales and truck sales up here, mainly because people were holding off, right?
It's only because it's so bad in previous years, and now it's coming back a little bit here.
But still in all, even with that, you and I talk to an awful lot of people on a daily basis, and they are struggling, and it's difficult. And then, I mean, a trip to the grocery store these days is really something. We haven't even seen the drought prices hit full on as yet. So it's extremely difficult. And I've always liked the quote that Sylvia Porter, the late Sylvia Porter, made about America being a nation of economic illiterates. Well, if the nation is economically illiterate, then Hawaii has made a cultural part of this, because we don't know where jobs come from. We don't know what the true costs are. We always talk about costs in terms of what the net is to us and not who's paying the freight. And we see that more and more now we're shifting the costs, particularly the direct costs. And we get into things like that when we talk about the rail and when we talk about new projects.
And it's even worse than that, Sam, in that we're shifting the cost, but it's not even shifting the cost to the future, it's shifting the cost to the next generation. It's our kids and our grandkids who are going to have to pay all this enormous debt. And whether it's something like the rail system or this gigantic national debt, which Congress is foisting upon our nation, we're consuming all this spending today for our generation and asking our children to pay for it. It's the exact opposite of what the greatest generation had done for our nation. I think that's irresponsible, and that absolutely has got to change.
Well, the fact that our kids are probably not going to be as successful as we were, not going to have the financial choices that we do, that's frightening. It's the first generation in history. And I know You've said oftentimes one of the reasons you got into public office and the reason that you're running and the reason that you spend time away from your family is for your family, and particularly for your kids and all that.
Right, and you know, Sam, you know, being in the legislature, it's an amazing privilege to hold elective office.
Sure.
And it is an amazing opportunity to be able to get up every single morning and do something to make this world just a little bit better place.
And it's
there's
a
very,
serious
very few jobs
responsibility.
that you can do that.
Yeah.
But what I find tragic is all too often in Congress and in the legislature that there's too many politicians who view their job is not to try and make this world a little bit better place, but instead, who can I take care of? What special interest group can I benefit here today? That short-term mentality is what's going to be the ruin of our country, and it's going to be the ruin of our state. But Sam, before we make everybody so pessimistic and down,
Oh, we don't want to do that. We're not going to do that.
I want to emphasize here.
We want them to be aware.
We have a
alert.
power to change this.
Absolutely.
This is the amazing thing about being an American, and that is we don't have to accept this. We can change this, and we can change it. And the way you change it is on Election Day by voting. If we don't like, as I don't like, the machine, one-party rule, this sclerosis that has set into our politics here in Hawaii, well then don't accept the incumbent status quo that you see going on time and again here in Hawaii. And vote for people who are going to challenge the status quo. That's the right way to change things. Because yes, the first step is to understand these problems. But the next step that's even more important is to do something about it. And the best way to do something about it is vote, and vote for change.
I think I was elected 4 years before you were.
Yes.
And I remember at that time, we actually had more discussions, and there were factions within the majority party that allowed for coalitions and all, but issues were discussed. Now there's hardly any issues discussed unless they're discussed behind closed doors, and everything has become personalized. And of course the argument about the Congress is the Congress is in gridlock, and people are talking at each other and not talking with each other. How do you feel about that?
You know, that's a tragedy, Sam. I think here in Hawaii and in Hawaii politics, too much is done behind closed doors. Too much of the decision making is done, indeed, not even by the elected officials, but instead done by the old boy network, the special interest groups, that big government, big business, big union coalition makes the decisions and gives orders to their hand-picked elected officials who just carry out marching orders. That's wrong. And similarly, in Congress today, what I'm very frequently frustrated with Congress, as the American people are, is that Congress is so much about scoring political points. It's about getting on the 24/7 news, making a quick soundbite, instead of trying to find comprehensive ways to fix problems. And that's why Congress justly has such a low approval rating. And again, I come back to Sam, you have a choice. All of us have a choice here. All your viewers watching this program have a choice. Do you like that? Do you want some more of it? Well, then fine. You be passive, do nothing. Or if you don't like it, as I don't like it, well then do something about it.
You know, it's
the easiest
amazing.
thing is to vote.
You've heard the excuses why people don't vote and all that. Oh, you can't make a change. You can't fight City Hall. I always like the ones that say, "I don't want to be on the jury list." Well, guess what? They don't use the voters list. They use your motor vehicle list. But all of the excuses are lame. And as we were saying earlier, when you look at other countries and other people and what they've gone through for the right to vote, it pales in comparison.
Yes.
Did I hear you compare or call yourself, in this age of labeling, a centrist? And what is a centrist?
Well, let me put it this way. Okay. I am much more concerned and much more interested in solutions than in sound bites. Okay. I believe that what we need in our country and what's desperately needed in Washington, D.C. is people working together to find solutions to things. So for me, I've been labeled as a centrist, I realized, by various
Oh, you were labeled. I thought that was your term. No?
The National Journal, which is a major national publication, concentrates on Congress, labeled me as one of the few remaining centrists left in Congress when I was there. And I don't shy away from National Journal identifying me as a centrist, because I believe that the problem in Washington, D.C. is there's so much more of an interest in name-calling and not enough of an interest in actually trying to find solutions. And I'll give you a perfect example of this here, Sam. The healthcare reform battle that we have going on in Congress. what we have going on with that healthcare bill that was passed in 2010.
The Patient Affordability Care Act.
Was, you know, in every previous time where we had done major national reforms, such as, for example, the 1986 tax reform package that Ronald Reagan had pushed through, we found a national consensus to try and fix and address tax reform. And Ronald Reagan worked with the Democrats in Congress and the Republicans and found and came up, I think, with a very good tax reform package in 1986. The Obamacare package that went through was completely one-sided. There was very little effort to try and find any sort of cooperation or collaboration. I actually believe that we do need healthcare reform in this country. But the way it is currently structured is all wrong. I think what we need is things like tort reform. We need to allow the interstate sale of health insurance. We need to expand the sale of health savings accounts. Those are the right kind of reforms that are needed, but are completely ignored and didn't get included in any sort of bill. And so what we have left is a bill which is all about bureaucracy, all about spending money.
2,000 pages worth.
2,000 pages that was passed in the dead of the night. That's not the right way to govern.
Yeah, but then the then minority or majority leader in the House, Ms. Pelosi from California, said, we'll pass the bill first and then we'll read it. So isn't that the new paradigm? Isn't that what we do? We pass it and then read it?
Yeah, and that's wrong. And that's wrong, Sam. And I come back to you again here that I believe that politics has gone far too much about scoring points and not enough about trying to find ways to actually make a difference and solve people's problems in their lives.
Yeah. Well, and we've got that here in Hawaii too, to a certain extent. Part of it is because when you have such a dominant one-party rule, as we did during statehood, was the other party, was my party, your party. Yeah. But now it's opposite. Yeah. You don't have the same kind of discussion. You have people arguing among themselves, and the public is saying, wait a minute,
yeah.
Who's listening to us? And they get very frustrated.
Right.
But our message, yours and mine, is very clear.
Yeah.
Don't give up on that, because some people would like you to do that. You get out there and vote, get involved in candidates. But as I always tell people, don't ask the candidate where he or she went to high school. Yeah. Don't even ask them what military unit they were in. Yeah. Don't ask them who their girlfriend is. Ask them about things like health care and workers' compensation and sales taxes and things of that nature.
Right. And you know, Sam, as you well know, our democracy was founded, intended to be a competition of ideas. It's supposed to work around at least two political parties competing for the people's support. And unfortunately, what we have in Hawaii is this sclerosis of one-party rule where there is no dialogue, there is no competition of ideas. Everything is decided by...
And the public suffers.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we don't solve the problems either. Right?
And then more and more people get tuned out of their government because they say we can't make a difference, and that enhances the power of the old boy network. They become even more powerful because they dictate what's going on in our government and what's going on in our community. But we have to fight back on that. And I'm still a believer, I'm still an optimist. I still believe that the power rests in the people. We are still Americans. We have the ability and the power to right our ship. But we have to exercise that power.
Listen, as of this broadcast, we haven't heard of a vice presidential choice for Mr. Romney. Are you waiting by your phone like the NFL draft?
No, I don't think Mitt Romney is going to be giving me a call here. And if he is, I don't.
Okay, so
I'd ask him for a double check thing.
Double check. All right, so I mentioned, look, you've been in the State House, you've been in the City Council, you've been in the Congress. You want to go back again. When you grow up, what do you want to be? What do you want to do?
You mean when I was a child? Or
no, now, right now, when you grow up. You're still growing.
Every single day.
If you had your druthers?
I want to be a good husband and a good dad. That's what's important to me.
You've always said that.
And I've always said that here. And you know what, Sam? That's more important to me than winning any political office.
And that's not as easy done as said.
No. And you know, Sam, it's tough to be in elective office with kids who are in school. You know, right now, I'm the only major candidate for public office with kids who are in school. And I think that's an unfortunate tragedy. We're missing that perspective in our government.
It's the same situation. You're a double dipper in the extent that military, your family suffers and they have to do things on their own. In elective office, same thing. The family has to carry the burden. So it would seem to me that one of the logical things is we make the families as strong, independent, with choices as possible. Well, you've been talking so long, Charles. We're running out of time now. What's the one final thing you want to leave with our people in Hawaii?
That we have the capacity to change, but right now, we are headed in the direction of becoming the first generation in American history to leave the next generation worse off. And we have this choice. Do we want that or not? If we don't want that, as you don't want it, as I don't want it here, get up, get out, and vote. Now, my guess here is, Sam, the people watching this program, probably most of them vote. But my guess also here is every single person who's watching this program right now can talk to 10 family members and friends, not strangers, the closest friends in their lives, and I bet you if they talk to their 10 closest family members and friends, half of them are not registered and not voting. So I want to ask every one of the viewers watching this program right now, in the next 3 months, get out there, talk to your 10 closest family members and friends, get them out there to vote. And if you have a little bit of extra time, please become a participant in your democracy. And when I say participant, it can be something as small as sticking a bumper sticker on your car or a yard sign in front of your house, whatever candidate you like. But don't be an observer, be a direct participant in your democracy. That has been, that will always be the only way we ever save our community and our country.
There you have it, folks. You heard it from Charles Djou. You hear it from me. Be positive, but be proactive. Get involved. There are so many things that you can do. And again, if you have any suggestions or comments about this program, please contact me directly. We'll be very happy to talk about them. But we thank Charles Djou. Thank you for all of your service, your military service, and for your legislative service as well.
Thank you.
Get out there, get involved. There's still plenty of time, and you can make a difference, and it's going to determine what Hawaii's future is. For us, we see a better day. Thank you very much. Aloha. We'll talk to you again soon.